Senior Technical Engineer and Instructor at Terrapin. And this month's subject, we're going to be talking about something very interesting that comes up quite often in our discussions and support rooms with our technicians. And this is web browsers and security that's related to them. A lot of information that we could probably talk a long time about, but we've kind of boiled it down to what you really need to know and what we want to share with you for this installment of Webinar Wednesday. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my video so you can concentrate on what we have to share. And I'm going to go ahead and get started into our presentation. And again, like I said, it's just dealing a lot with webinars. You deal with the web and web browsers. You hear in the news about the different types of web browsers there are. And of course, one thing that's been a constant, and that is change. And change with technology, along with what's happening in 2020, is almost the norm. Really, it is. So when you think about modern web browsers, no matter what you choose, you should be okay. So we'll just say that right up front. You don't have to worry that you're using the wrong web browser. It will come down to personal preference, computer resources. It'll come down to whether security and privacy are a priority for you and what you are wanting to do, which I think for most of us it is, or at least it should be. So in kind of going through the different web browsers that are available, you can probably think of some of the ones that you have dealt with, and likely they're going to be on this list here. So this is not going to be any huge revelation to anybody that these are the ones, and of course you can probably identify them by the look of their icons that you see on your desktop or in the advertisements that you have seen. On this list, you're going to see Google Chrome. It is by far the most widely used of all the modern web browsers that we see. There's Mozilla Firefox. There's Internet Explorer, Safari, Microsoft Edge. Now, some of the ones that we did not put on this list just because we didn't have time to talk about all of them that are also used but not quite as commonly. Opera. Opera has been around for a long time and is one that a lot of people use. UC browser, Yandex browser, Chromium, and Maxthon is another one that is used, especially in areas of where you're really, really concerned about privacy and security. But for the most part, these are the ones that you're going to see used. And of course, of all of these, we find that Chrome and Firefox are the most prevalent that are used on most computers that we work with and that we recommend. Internet Explorer is a close third. Obviously, it's installed on almost every computer, but most people tend to usually lean towards an alternative browser than Internet Explorer. And we're going to talk about Internet Explorer a little bit more as we go on as well. But let's talk about Microsoft Edge just a minute. Microsoft Edge browser, obviously from Microsoft. It's very fast, integrates with everything Windows very well, as you would expect, coming from Microsoft. It's a lot like a Google Chrome and how it operates with your Gmail account. So Google Chrome working with the Gmail services, very well integrated. The same is kind of with Microsoft and its services. The new Edge browser is geared towards synchronizing and working with your Microsoft account, Office 365, and things like that. Now, the Edge browser is newer. So if many of you that have listened before, you know that we've talked about past technologies. And if you've been around browsers for any period of time, you know that there have been browser wars between who's better and who's not, and who works with certain services and who does not. And Internet Explorer, going way back in different iterations, as they switch gears from Internet Explorer version 2, 3, 4, et cetera, it's like every time they changed versions, they improved things, but they kind of changed the railroad tracks a little bit. So it took websites that were geared towards one browser to kind of reprogram and work with the next generation of web browsers. Microsoft Edge, while it isn't a new web browser, many Windows users are just noticing that the latest version of Edge, which recently rolled out to everyone in a recent Windows update this past quarter or so, you may have noticed it, and sometimes it'll work with, I would say, most websites. There are a few that it won't because maybe they were geared towards the earlier version of Internet Explorer. That was the previous naming or version of it. So you have to be careful about that side of things. But don't be inclined to write off Microsoft's latest web browser just because it was included or just because it's a Microsoft product. But the Edge product has some surprisingly smart features that will put it in contention for your default web browser and how that works. So that's some of the pros and cons that you can think about when using that. Now, what about Internet Explorer? We've mentioned that, you've seen it in the news and how that works. If you still have Internet Explorer installed on your computer, it's probably time to uninstall it and move forward with a different solution. Probably not a big revelation there. You remember Internet Explorer has been around for a long time, and Windows 7 and some Windows 10 computers may still have it installed. But Microsoft recently announced that they are going to be discontinuing support for Internet Explorer. That is the pre-Edge browser series of the program. So you recognize the icon. It has the E with the little gold swirl around it. Is very easily recognizable as Internet Explorer, and many people I have seen still use it. We don't recommend using the old Internet Explorer browser anymore because it is highly targeted by malware and is no longer supported by Microsoft. So keep that in mind. Now, there are some situations that dictate using the older version of Internet Explorer. We have found that there are some court websites, believe it or not, but just because of the programming that they were used to design those websites, they were made to work specifically with Internet Explorer. Most of them are already in the works of updating their coding so they'll work with the newer browsers or alternate browsers. But just keep that in mind that if you do need to use Internet Explorer, it should by no means be your default and should be only used when you have to go to a specific website that supports that older technology that you need to access. Otherwise, don't use it. Because it was automatically included with Windows, and obviously it's been around for a long time, it's always been a huge target of hackers to be able to take advantage of loopholes and bad programming or missed, loopholes in the program to gain access to your computer, privacy data, and etc. Not necessarily because it was a bad program. It's just that if you're going to hack something, you want to hack something that is on almost everybody's computer and you have the biggest percentage of success. Internet Explorer was that target. So keep that in mind. Now, as far as a timeline for this, you can see here that the support for uh, Internet Explorer is going to positively stop on August 17th, 2021. Now, they have already kind of ended that with updating it and doing other things from Windows 7, also going into Internet Explorer by introducing Microsoft Edge and its newer counterparts. So please keep that in mind so that you don't get caught off guard and you have a backup for going to a newer version of Internet Explorer, Edge, or one of the alternates that we're going to talk about today. So where are we headed in talking about all of this? Well, the biggie is privacy. Privacy is where it is all about when it comes to browsing the web. And this is something that was kind of taken for granted for a long time because people enjoyed having access to things. If you gave up your email address and a little bit of information, you had access to all these resources, or somebody would host all of your pictures for free. You had these services that you gained what you perceived as free, but what they were gaining was privacy information or information that you were volunteering about yourself. Those things have kind of come to the light or to the forefront now. And most web browsers are putting tools in place to protect you. Your web browser is the vehicle that carries you around the internet to whatever desired website you're looking to go to. And as such, it knows precisely what sites you have visited. It knows how long you spend browsing them. It knows what you've clicked on or almost clicked on. Like, for example, oh, you paused a little bit longer on this page that had these ads on it. Anyone who has access to your web browser can have a window into your income, your political leanings, and other personal information. So, privacy should be one of your first considerations. Before examining the impact your browser can have on your privacy, though, you need to understand a little bit of how the activity is monitored. Well, having a company directly record your browsing history is a risk. For example, you could think of Google and Chrome. The more common threats to your privacy come from online advertisers and third-party tracking software that can be put into your browser as add-ons or tracking cookies that websites drop onto your computer to know when you've visited and what's the last thing you have done. So similar to Google, advertisers and trackers want to record as much as your online browsing as possible when you are on the internet. The more data they have, the better they can show you ads specifically tailored to you. Case in point, you may have Googled for something, and then all of a sudden you're on Facebook, and all the advertisements you see on Facebook are all geared towards the last Google search you did for an anniversary gift or something. Or maybe you were looking to do a home improvement project and you were looking up some things on Home Depot. All of a sudden, you're having all these targeted ads in the email messages, in your Facebook, in other places you go to. That's the finger pointing that we're talking about. And the tools that they use on the internet for doing that are usually types of cookies and things that will track your activity. Now, we can get into a lot of details when it comes to how they fingerprint you and your web browser and all the characteristics of the device, the make and model of your computer. Gosh, it's going to get kind of scary, and you'll be like, I don't want to get on the internet ever again. But until it has enough information to identify and follow you, it's pretty generic types of information. So it's not sharing too much personal information, but yet it is sharing something. So what can we do? Well, one thing is to take a look at what the browsers are offering you, and all of these modern browsers that we're talking about offer some type of privacy setting or settings that will allow you to control what is happening on your computer when you are browsing the internet, so that you have control over these little tiny packets of information that websites or services are trying to plant on your browser while you're on a website. What we refer to as cookies and the crumbs they leave behind, and to differentiate you from others, like name tagging. So where would you start when thinking about privacy in these matters? Well, like I said, all of them provide different tiers or different options for protecting your privacy. But there are a couple that come out to the forefront if you are looking for privacy options. Uh, the tie for first place comes between Mozilla Firefox, which most of you may have seen and heard of for a long time, and then a newer web browser out that's called Brave. Now, first, we're going to take a look at just talking about Firefox for a moment. Firefox is the third most popular browser on the internet, behind Google's Chrome and Apple's Safari. And by the way, I mentioned Safari because Safari can also be used on a Windows machine as well as a Mac, as well as Firefox and Google Chrome. So it's platform independent. Firefox was developed by Mozilla, and the Firefox team has improved the browser's privacy protections in recent years. I would say over the last 2 years specifically, they've really been working on introducing things to do anti-fingerprinting, meaning that you can't be identified. There's a bit of ambiguity when you are browsing the internet that you can invoke, as well as what they call enhanced tracking protection features this year, both of which make it more difficult for third-party trackers to follow you around the internet. Now, unlike Brave, that's the other one we mentioned, the standard Firefox does not automatically block advertisements. However, there are numerous browser extensions that you can download, which is one of the things Firefox is really good about, having this pool of extensions to do these things, to block advertisements and other things you don't want to have on your computer. However, there are a number of browser extensions you could use to prevent advertisers, not just for Firefox, but others as well. If you primarily browse the internet on your mobile device, Firefox Focus incorporates automatic ad blocking as well, if you're interested in something for your mobile device. Now, the Brave browser was designed to make privacy very, very simple for anyone. It's an open source browser built on top of Chromium. Chromium obviously being built off of the open source software for Chrome, which Google also uses, and which, by the way, Microsoft Edge also uses that as their background for their browser, which really means it's easy for Chrome users to make a switch. So if you've been using Google Chrome, you would fit right into using Brave or the others. However, unlike Chrome, Brave does not collect anything, no data about your online activity, and your data remains completely private and on your device. It also makes blocking trackers real easy. So instead of forcing users to decide which plugins and browser extensions you should download, like what Firefox and Google Chrome would do, Brave comes fully equipped right out of the box, default when you install it, to block all third-party and advertising cookies, because basically the HTTPS and the browsing cookies are pretty much everywhere you go to on any website. So that is their mission, and that's to encourage websites not to rely on advertising based on tracking you and tracking you around the internet. So they reward people for integrating with their browser. Another browser you may have heard of, I don't have a picture of this one, but you may have heard it. It's called the Tor browser, T-O-R browser. Now, some consider Tor to be the best option for privacy if it's your utmost concern. The Tor browser is based on Firefox, but basically it's a stripped down version, and it's specifically calibrated to work on the Tor network. Now, we're not going to get into all of that. We'll just leave that as it is. If you know Tor and the Tor network, you know what I'm talking about. If you're not, you're probably not really worried that much about security and what that can do. But just keep in mind that if you're wanting to go top tier on that, Tor is one of the ones that you can do. Do keep in mind that any of these that you choose to use, though, you have to be careful, because they will, when you disable tracking or you block too much, whether that's Firefox or if you're dealing with Google Chrome, you could disable a lot of the nice things you like about these websites you browse to. So it always kind of comes down to convenience versus security, even on a computer. We've talked about that in the past. So you find the perfect balance for you and what you're willing to work with and allow. And once you find that happy medium, you'll be a happy internet browser. Now, you'll notice that we didn't talk about Chrome in the past list about privacy. And why is that? Well, any discussion of privacy in web browsers must begin with Google Chrome, primarily because, number one, it is hands down the most popular web browser. Chrome handles over 60% of web traffic. Imagine that, 60%. Now, this is unfortunate because Google uses Chrome as a window to peer into every action you take online. So unless you modify your Google privacy settings, Google Chrome records every site you visit so that Google can serve you targeted ads. Uh-oh, you may not have known that. But now, even worse, I hate to take it further, Chrome does very little to block other advertisers and trackers from monitoring you with cookies and or fingerprinting your device. I think there was a There was a Washington Post article that reported Chrome gathers roughly 11,000 trackers on average a week. So just think, do you want 11,000 pairs of eyes on you every time you do an internet search? That's the scary part, right? Well, that doesn't mean that Google Chrome is not a good web browser. It's actually very good. It's also one of the most popular, and for good reason, because of the services it integrates with and what it provides. As with anything, you want to make sure that you're making a choice, whether it's Google Chrome or whether you are looking to talk about using maybe Safari as another one. If you're using a Mac, it's because it's built in. Make sure you're taking the time to learn what it can protect you against. Where are those features at? How do you turn them on or turn them off if you need to, and what you can do with it. Um, Now, that's kind of going towards the security and how it can protect you, or some that don't protect you. Firefox, Google Chrome can protect you. You have to make sure to turn on the options to do so. If you need help in doing that, you can look it up in the online help for the browser, or feel free to reach out to your favorite IT person, hint, hint, if you need any help, and we can help you with that. But now let's just circle back and take a look at these browsers again, just talking about a few other things. And first of all, I'm just going to talk about Mozilla again. This is Mozilla Firefox. Now, I've used Mozilla for myself personally, and it's been my browser of choice for a long time, both on my Windows and my Mac machines. It's a lot like Google Chrome. The things I liked about it, because I do know how to control the security settings of both Google Chrome and Firefox, but what edged me over towards Firefox, it's a little less resource intensive on my computer. You may have noticed that if you're using Google Chrome, if you ever look in your task manager for the program, you'll see several copies of the program running in the background, and that can eat up a lot of resources on your computer. And if you're working in several Microsoft Word documents, several PDF files, and you're compiling other things, these things take up resources. And having Google Chrome, while you're not doing anything, but it has all these processes loaded in the background, can rob you of processing speed and also RAM that you might need on your computer to do your everyday work. So that was one of the things that kind of lent me towards leaning onto Firefox versus Google Chrome. Not necessarily the security, like I said, because I knew how to turn that on and off in both programs, but more of the uh, less resource intensive on my computer is what lent me that way. Now, the other one we talked about too, Google Chrome, and of course it is, like I said, it is by far the most popular, and it does perform well, but there's a reason for that. And the reason is, it's, like I said, it will load copies of itself in the background and preload things for you, so that when you do a search or you're going to go here, it's already preemptively started looking this up or loaded something in the background. All of that makes it work really, really quick, and it makes it very low maintenance. It also is very fast. The downside is that it can be a little bit of a processor and a memory hog due to what it's doing in the background. You may see the name of that process in the task manager called Google Chrome Helper, or what's referred to as the renderer, which is often consuming a disproportionate amount of CPU and memory. So just keep that in mind. So if you like using Google Chrome, no problem. Just keep tabs on what it's loading in the background and your security settings, and you should be fine. It's like anything else. You want to know what's going on and how it operates, because if anything, it's what you don't know that could be hurting you. Now, of course, there is Safari, and of course, Apple is going to tell you that Safari is the fastest and safest browser. And because it's specifically designed to run on Apple products, obviously it's going to work best on those, but it does work on Windows as well, and quite well. It's very similar to what you would expect when you're running Google Chrome, or if you're running Firefox. With any of these, in Safari included, you have your settings that you can control pop-ups, the privacy settings, and so forth, much like you would find in the other browsers, especially sites that are not designed, or I should say, if you be careful of sites that are designed specifically for Internet Explorer. Those sites could give you trouble when using Safari, Google Chrome, or Firefox. That's why on my computers, I always have two browsers. I have, like maybe for example, on mine, I do have Safari and I have Firefox installed, and then I also have Edge browser. So having those installed, if I run in problems with one, I can always switch over to the other and see if it works on another browser, just in case there's a problem. Now that's browsers. When it comes to the next level, it's talking about searching. So many of the search engines that you work with are going to integrate with a search engine. And not all search engines are made the same. Now, when we talk search engines, these are basically services on the internet that crawl web pages and websites, and they index them to provide you a really quick and fast way to find what you're looking for. Many days, you'll find that when you're doing searches, especially in Google, that the first maybe 3 or 4 entries after you've done a search are ads rather than actual entries on a search. So you have to be careful of that. But there are different types of search engines available that don't track your information. Google's not listed here because it does track everything. One of these that are listed here is called Start Page. Really, really good. DuckDuckGo has been around for a long time. Funny name, but it works really well. I've been personally using that one for quite a while. It uses Google searching behind the scenes to get the information, but it uses its own servers to produce the results to you, so it's not being tracked back to you. There's no targeting, fingerprinting, or cookies that are related to it. So if you do a search for a present for your anniversary, it's not going to show up on your Facebook page or anywhere else that you've been doing that search and spoil the surprise. Swiss Cows, I know again, a funny name, uses privately owned servers and collects search results from multiple engines in a very similar way so that you're not tracked and there's nothing that's being tracked or fingerprinted towards you. And then, of course, the last one there, Disconnect Search, is very similar to what its name is saying. It's going to give you results that are displayed in a style of a search engine where they're taken from, but not with anything that is traceable or tracked back to you specifically. Now, how do you know if you are on a website and the website is secure? Now, this is a question that we see and have to ask or answer frequently. And I want to show you on this this slide I have here. We just did a normal browser window. We went to our website. And if you go to a website and you see that little padlock symbol, that padlock symbol should be on every website you go to. If you don't see that, then what it means is that everything that you're looking at or that you enter is just open text. It's text that's openly available and readable by anybody who might intercept that from any source. With the padlock, that means that information between you and that browser is encrypted with an SSL certificate. We'll just use that term. And you don't have to worry about that being intercepted or being spied upon. Please make sure to look for the padlock icon. If a website does not have that, in this day and age, almost every legitimate website should have that. It's very easy to incorporate. It's not very expensive. And if they haven't done it, there's usually a reason why. Either they're being lax in their security, or they're cheap in their security, or there's a reason more sinister in why they don't want to do that. So just be careful about that. The other thing that we see frequently is we will ask people, hey, could you browse to this website for us? And what they'll do is they'll bring up their browser and they will go into their Google page like we have right here, and they will enter in the website they want to go to. So rather than going to the address bar, they go to the Google search and they'll type in, just as an example, www.terrapintechnology.com or www.microsoft.com. What many users don't realize is when they are typing in this information into a Google search window, it can give you a whole lot of different results from that, some of which may not be the legitimate website. and could be malicious in nature or otherwise. So this is a trend that we've noticed quite a bit. And what we want to just inform you about is be aware of what the actual address bar is, where it's located, and that's where you should enter in website addresses, or what are called URLs, Uniform Resource Locators, on the internet. And by doing so, when you type in this case, at the very top of the screen, rather than in the Google search window, at the very top is usually where most web browsers are going to have the address bar where you can type in the web address of where you want to go. And when you do that, then you're going to actually get the website, and you'll see the website name up at the very top. One key place where you want to make sure you do this is when you are browsing, or going, not browsing, but going to your financial websites. You don't want to do a search for your Wells Fargo account in the Google search and then click on the first link that comes up for Wells Fargo, because that may not be the true website for the bank. Go to the address bar and type in the actual address or URL, I guess we mentioned that before, of the website, and go there directly. That way you know that you're going to the legitimate website, you can look for the padlock icon, and you know exactly where you're going. The last thing a couple things I want to talk about is all of these modern web browsers have a way of allowing you to browse the internet and block tracking cookies and this other finger pointing that's going on. In this case here, using Google Chrome, you'll see where it has an option under File on the menu, you have New Incognito Window. And now Firefox, the Edge browser, Safari all have something similar, not necessarily called the same, but they have a privacy mode where when you turn this on, you start browsing, it will reject all third-party cookies, it will not allow any type of tracking, and it will protect you from being spied upon by these third-party sites. The other thing to keep in mind is things could be blocked or not blocked depending on where you go to. If you're going to a website and you're expecting some type of pop-up to approve a purchase or to authorize something, but you never get it, most of them will give you a little icon indicating that it's blocking something. If you want to check whether something's being blocked or not, especially for these pop-ups, in this case here, you'll see the example is for Google Chrome. If you go to the little three dots, the ellipsis, and you drop down to settings, you'll go to the privacy and security section, and then under site settings, you see how it's kind of buried for you to turn this on. There's an option under pop-ups and redirects where you can turn on and turn off the blocked option for blocking these pop-ups on your screen. So keep that in mind. All of these different web browsers offer the ability to block pop-ups, which should be turned on, but at the same time, you need to know how to turn it off in case it's interfering with you doing your work on a legitimate website. And last but not least, just kind of to reiterate, there are some websites that don't work with certain browsers. There may be some that will work with Firefox and not Google Chrome. There may be some that will work with the Edge browser and not Firefox. There may be some that will not work with anything but Internet Explorer. Just be cautious of that, and know that if that does happen, as your first line of defense, try a different web browser and see if you're able to get to the website you need to. If the website is geared towards the older version of Internet Explorer, be careful. If you still have a computer that has it installed and you keep that there just for that occasion, make a note of what websites you use for that and don't use it for anything else. And then at the same time, it might be good to check and see that that site is going to be updating to work with a newer modern browser and not the old Internet Explorer. Because at nothing else, come by the end of the end of next year, around August, that browser is going to disappear and it will no longer work at all for anyone. So keep that in mind. And last but not least, and just kind of rounding out our discussion with security and web browsers, is Adobe Flash. Now, Adobe Flash has been around for a long time, and working with displaying specifically media, some videos, and rich content on websites, but has always been a huge target for hackers to be able to gain access to your computer and your web browser. Adobe Flash has been discontinued and is no longer supported. Most of the browsers we're talking about right now, if they have not already disabled Adobe Flash as part of their updates this month, they will be by December of this year, December 2020. So keep that in mind. Uh, if you try to browse to a website and the content doesn't come up, that might be one of the reasons why is it's using the old Adobe Flash for their content. So I know that I had one attorney that I was working with, and he was having trouble viewing the soccer leagues in Europe, and the website he was using to access that was using Adobe Flash. So keep that in mind. There are sites that still use that, but you want to just kind of keep an eye on those type of things. All right, well, that's around our discussion for browsers. I'll leave the chat window open for just a little bit if you have any questions. Otherwise, we really appreciate you attending. And as always, if you have topics that you would like for us to discuss, feel free to send them to us at info@terrapintechnology.com, and we'll be happy to incorporate that into a future webinar. Thank you for attending. I'll leave the chat window open for a little bit to help answer any questions.